Hello everyone. My name is Storm Pemberton and I'm 32 years old. For the past decade, I lived my life as a ghost. I was invisible, my voice stolen and used to build someone else's throne, someone else's empire. But what happens when a ghost learns to scream? I'm about to tell you. In a few minutes, I'm going to walk you through the moment I stood in a crowd of thousands and watched a multi-million-dollar brand, an entire career built on charisma and lies, crumble into dust because of a single, undeniable truth. My truth. The core of it all, the lie that broke me, wasn't about money or fame. It was about a story I wrote about my grandmother's hands. It was the most personal thing I had ever put to paper, and my boss, the influencer icon Celeste Vance, posted it on her blog under her own name and accepted global praise for its beautiful, raw honesty. An honesty that was mine. Before we get into it, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. It's always incredible to see how far a single voice can travel. If you've ever felt invisible or had your work stolen, hit that like button because this story is for you. It all started 10 years ago, not with a formal job offer but with a coffee and a promise. I just graduated with a degree in literature, my head full of poetry and my bank account full of moths. Celeste, or Cece as she insisted I call her, was a friend of a friend, a girl with bright eyes, boundless energy, and a fledgling lifestyle blog. "I just don't have the time to write, you know," she said, stirring her latte with a frantic energy that I would later learn was her default state. "I have the ideas, Storm, so many ideas, but the actual typing, it's a drag. You're so good with words, we could be a team." A team. That was the word she used. It was a word that shimmered with possibility, with collaboration and mutual respect. I saw us as partners, two sides of the same coin. She was the face, the vibrant personality, and I was the engine, the quiet wordsmith who gave her ideas, structure, and soul. The first year felt like that. We were a team. I'd write blog posts based on her rambling, enthusiastic voice notes. I'd craft witty captions for her photos. The pay was sporadic and rarely what we agreed upon, but I was caught up in the momentum. Her blog was growing, people were listening, or rather, they were reading my words and falling in love with her. "You're a magician," she'd squeal down the phone after a post went viral. "We're killing it." That word was my currency. It was the fuel I ran on when the actual paychecks were late. I convinced myself I was building something with her, that my contribution was valued, even if it was invisible to the outside world. My grandmother, June, was the only person who saw the cracks forming. She was a woman carved from granite and grace, her opinions as sturdy and reliable as the old oak tree in her backyard. I'd visit her on Sundays, my laptop open on her worn kitchen table. "She pays you in compliments, little bird," Grandma June said one afternoon, her eyes not leaving the dough she was kneading. "Compliments don't pay the rent." "It's more than that, Grandma," I'd argue, defending a reality that was already starting to feel thin. "It's a partnership. We're building a brand. Once it's big enough, I'll get my official title, a real contract." She dusted her hands with flour and looked at me, her gaze sharp and knowing. "Your words have weight, Storm. They are precious things. Don't you ever let anyone treat them like they're cheap." I didn't listen, of course. I was 23 and convinced I was on the cusp of something extraordinary. I ignored the warning signs. I ignored the way "we" slowly became "I" in Cece's conversations. A viral post was no longer our success, but the result of my vision. A brilliant brand collaboration was a testament to my negotiation skills. My role became less defined, more amorphous. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't even an employee. I was just there, the ghost in the machine. I wrote the blog posts, the social media content, the newsletters, the sponsored ad copy, the video scripts. I wrote replies to fan emails, often pouring my own empathy and experiences into comforting strangers who thought they were connecting with Cece. In exchange, I got a monthly transfer that was always just enough to keep me from panicking, and the vicarious thrill of watching the numbers climb. 100,000 followers, 500,000. 1,000,000. Each milestone was a party I wasn't invited to, a champagne toast I only saw on Instagram stories. The neglect fostered a strange kind of resilience in me. Because I was on my own, I had to become a master of everything. I taught myself search engine optimization to make sure my blog posts ranked. I studied analytics to understand what content performed best. I learned graphic design to create compelling visuals. I became an expert in platform algorithms, in marketing funnels, in public relations crisis management. I was running an entire digital media empire from my cramped apartment, and the world thought it was the effortless work of one photogenic woman who was just naturally good at everything. The irony was a constant, bitter taste in my mouth. Meanwhile, Cece was collecting the rewards. She was flying to Paris for Fashion Week, sitting front row at shows she couldn't have even named a year prior. She was getting free cars, designer wardrobes, and invitations to exclusive events. And she brought along her new best friend, Tiffany. Tiffany was everything I wasn't, bubbly, polished, and perfectly happy to exist in Cece's reflected glow. She was given the title of creative director, a role that seemed to mostly involve taking artful photos of Cece and nodding enthusiastically during brainstorming sessions where I did all the talking. Tiffany got the salary, the benefits, the public credit. I got a text message at 2 in the morning. Hey, need a 1,000-word blog post on sustainable fashion by 9 a.m. Client paid a fortune for this, don't let me down. Noxo si. I became a creature of the night, fueled by caffeine and resentment. My friends stopped calling, tired of my constant refrain of, I can't, I have to work. I was tethered to Cece's ambition, my own dreams gathering dust in the corner. The foundational injustice wasn't a single event, but a slow, grinding erosion of my self-worth. It was 1,000 tiny cuts. It was being introduced at a party as my friend who helps out with my blog. It was Tiffany getting a bonus for an idea that I had pitched weeks earlier. It was the dawning, horrifying realization that Cece didn't see me as her partner, she saw me as her tool. My grandmother knew. She never said I told you so. She just offered me a safe harbor. Her quiet house was the only place I didn't feel like a phantom. It was the only place my voice was my own. Tell me a story, little bird, she'd say, and I would. I'd tell her about my day, about the ridiculous demands and the casual cruelty, and she would just listen. Her presence was a balm, a quiet affirmation that I was real, that I mattered. It was during one of those visits that I wrote the piece that would eventually become the catalyst for my liberation. Grandma June had fallen ill. Nothing life-threatening, but it was the first time I had been forced to confront her mortality. I sat by her bedside, watching her sleep, and I found myself staring at her hands. Those hands, they had baked 1,000 loaves of bread, planted 100 gardens, wiped away my childhood tears, and held my face with more tenderness than I had ever known. They were a roadmap of her life, of a love that was fierce and unconditional. I went home that night and I wrote. The words poured out of me, not for a deadline or a sponsored post, but from a place of profound love and fear. I wrote about her hands, about the stories etched in her skin, about the legacy of strength they represented. It was, without a doubt, the most honest and powerful thing I had ever written. I saved it to my personal drive, a piece of my soul captured in a Word document. It was for me, it was for her. A week later, Cece called in a panic. I have a deadline for that big magazine feature, the one on legacy. I have nothing. I've been so busy with this launch. You have to help me, Storm. You have to write something amazing. Something deep. I was tired. I was emotionally drained from my grandmother's health scare. I made a mistake. A terrible, life-altering mistake. I have something, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It might work. It's personal. I sent her the piece about my grandmother's hands. I told myself she would change it, adapt it, use it as inspiration. I told myself she wouldn't dare steal something so sacred. She posted it the next day. Verbatim. Not a single word was changed. The title was On Legacy and the Women Who Made Me by Celeste Vance. The comments section exploded. So moving, Cece. Your vulnerability is an inspiration. This made me cry. I'm calling my grandma right now. Famous authors, celebrities, people I admired, all praising her for her beautiful soul, for her incredible talent, for my words, my soul. I felt a shattering inside me, a deep structural crack. The ghost had been desecrated. That wasn't just work she had stolen, it was my love. That was the first fracture, but the final, explosive break was yet to come. It was building, a pressure growing deep beneath the surface, getting ready to tear my world, and hers, apart. The success of that stolen post went to Cece's head. It wasn't just about followers anymore, it was about prestige. She started positioning herself as a serious writer, a modern-day philosopher for the Instagram age, and the ultimate validation of that image? A book deal. She called me, her voice fizzing with an excitement that turned my stomach to ice. "Storm, you are not going to believe this, we got it. A major publisher, they want me to write a book." I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "Cece, that's amazing. What's the book about?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "It's a collection of essays, you know, like the legacy piece, all my deepest thoughts. They've already sent over the offer. The advance is insane." A cold dread washed over me. "So, what does this mean for me? For my role in this?" I was pleading, my voice thin and desperate. I was hoping for a glimmer of the old we, the long-dead partnership. There was a pause on the line, the first moment of hesitation I'd heard from her. Then she laughed, a light, tinkling sound that felt like shards of glass in my ear. "Oh, Storm, you are such a worrier. Of course, you'll be involved. I'll need you to, put it all together." "Put it all together?" I repeated, the words feeling foreign and insulting. "Cece, I would be writing the entire book." "Well, yes, obviously," she said, her tone breezy, as if discussing the weather. "You're the best at that stuff. I'll give you all my ideas, my voice notes, and you can just work your magic. It'll be easy for you." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was it. The moment to draw the line. If I'm going to write the book, Cece, I need to be credited, co-author, and I need to be compensated fairly, not just a monthly transfer. A percentage of the advance, of the royalties. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy and absolute. I could picture her perfectly, her brow furrowed, not with consideration, but with genuine confusion, as if her favorite appliance had suddenly started talking back to her. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost all its warmth, it was flat and cold. "Let's be really clear, Storm. This is my book. My face is on the cover. My name is on the spine. People are buying it because of me, not you. Who even are you?" The question hung in the air, a poisoned dart. Who even are you? "I'm the person who has written every single word that built this brand," I said, my voice shaking with a fury I hadn't realized was simmering inside me for years. "I'm the person whose soul you put on the internet and claimed as your own." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she scoffed. "I paid you for that piece just like I pay you for everything else. It's called work for hire. You're a service provider. You're the help." The help. That was the final straw. That single, dismissive phrase severed the last thread of loyalty, of hope, of foolish affection I had for the girl I once thought was my friend. The ghost in the machine had just been told she was nothing more than a dust rag. "As for your compensation," she continued, her voice dripping with condescension, "my publisher has allocated a small budget for research assistance. I can offer you $5,000 for the entire manuscript, and if you're very good, I'll put your name in the acknowledgments, a little consultant credit. It'll be great for your portfolio." $5,000. To write a book that would earn her a six-figure advance and launch her into a new stratosphere of fame, it wasn't an offer. It was an insult of such profound magnitude that it almost felt comical. I started to laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. It was a raw, broken, unhinged cackle that bubbled up from the deepest, most wounded part of me. "Storm, are you okay?" she asked, a flicker of annoyance in her voice. My laughter died in my throat. "No, Cece," I said, my voice suddenly calm, eerily so. "I'm not okay, but I will be." I ended the call. The silence of my apartment pressed in on me. I slid down the wall, my phone clattering to the floor. The tears I had been holding back for a decade finally came. It was a storm, a hurricane of grief for the years I had wasted, the credit I had lost, the friendship I had imagined. I wept for the naive girl who believed in the word we. I cried until I was empty, until there was nothing left but a cold, hard knot of rage in my chest. I picked up my phone. My hands were trembling, but my purpose was clear. I had one phone call to make. Grandma June picked up on the second ring. "Hello, little bird." I couldn't speak. A sob caught in my throat. "Breathe, Storm," she said, her voice a lifeline in the darkness. "Just breathe. Now, tell me what happened." Through hiccuping sobs, I told her everything. The book deal, the $5,000 insult, The final, crushing label, the help. She didn't interrupt, she just listened, a quiet vessel for my pain. When I was finished, the silence stretched for a moment. "Well," she said finally, her voice imbued with that familiar granite strength, "it seems to me you have a choice to make." "A choice?" I asked, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. "What choice? She has everything. The publisher, the audience, the money." "She has your words," Grandma June corrected gently. "But you have the truth. And you, my dear girl, have the talent. She is a decorated vase, you are the wellspring. She can't create a single drop without you." Her words sunk in, watering a seed of resolve that had just been planted in the scorched earth of my heart. "What do I do, Grandma?" "You have two options," she said, her voice clear and decisive. "You can accept her scraps and let this thief build a mansion on your soul, or you can pick up your own pen and you can build your own damn house." "Build my own damn house." The phrase echoed in the hollow space inside me. It was a call to arms, a declaration of independence. I stood up. The tears were gone. The shaking had stopped. In their place was a feeling I hadn't felt in a very long time. Power. It wasn't her power, reflected back at me. It was mine. "I'm going to write a book, Grandma," I said, the words tasting of freedom. "I know you are, little bird," she replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "But it won't be her book." "No," I said, looking at my reflection in the dark screen of my laptop. For the first time in years, I saw not a ghost, but a woman with a story to tell. It's going to be mine. That night, I made a decision. I would not be a ghost anymore. I would not be the help. I would be the author of my own story, and the author of hers. I was going to write a tell-all, and the entire world was going to know who Celeste Vance really was. The moment of decision was a quiet click of a key. I opened a new document. The title I typed was The Ghost's Manifesto. The first step was severing the cord. I composed a short professional email to Cece. It contained my resignation, effective immediately, and an invoice for all outstanding payments. I didn't mention the book deal or her insult. I gave her nothing, no emotion, no explanation, just a clean, cold cut. Hitting send was the most terrifying and liberating thing I had ever done. For 10 years, my entire financial and professional existence had been tied to her. Now, I was adrift. And I was completely, utterly broke. The path that followed was arduous. That's a gentle word for it. It was brutal. My savings were meager, a testament to years of being underpaid. I moved out of my small but decent apartment into a dingy room in a shared house on the edge of the city. My roommates were transient students and night shift workers I barely saw. The walls were paper thin, the heating was unreliable, and my diet consisted primarily of instant noodles and cheap coffee. I became a freelance mercenary. I wrote dating profiles for lonely dentists, product descriptions for terrible gadgets, and SEO articles for plumbing companies. The work was soulless and paid pennies, but it kept the lights on. I worked 18-hour days, my eyes burning from staring at the screen, my body aching from sitting in a rickety chair. Every spare moment, every ounce of remaining energy was poured into my book. The Ghost's Manifesto became my obsession. It was my secret project, typed out in the dead of night when the rest of the house was asleep. I chronicled everything. The stolen ideas, the late payments, the manipulative texts, the public lies. I had receipts. I had saved years of emails, text messages, and voice notes. It wasn't just a burn book, though. The more I wrote, the more it evolved into something deeper. It became a story about creative integrity, about the hidden labor that props up the shiny world of online fame. It was a story about a voice, my voice, and its long journey back to its rightful owner. While I was subsisting on caffeine and sheer will, Cece's life, as documented on her Instagram, was a fantasy of effortless success. The contrast was a daily exercise in exquisite torture. One day, I'd be ghostwriting a blog post for a pet food company while eating stale crackers for lunch. That evening, I'd scroll through photos of Cece and Tiffany in Bali on a writing retreat for her upcoming book. They were doing sunrise yoga, sipping cocktails from coconuts, and posting captions about the importance of finding your authentic voice. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. She posted a photo of her new home office. It was a sprawling, sun-drenched room with minimalist furniture and a view of the skyline. She captioned it, "My sanctuary. This is where the magic happens." I looked around my cramped, damp room at the pile of dirty laundry in the corner and the flickering fluorescent light above me. This was where the magic was actually happening, and it was anything but glamorous. In the midst of this struggle, I started to forge a new support system, my chosen family. It began with Marcus. He was a friend from college I had lost touch with, a kind, steady guy who worked as a graphic designer. We reconnected by chance at a coffee shop, and for the first time in years, I told someone the whole truth. He didn't just listen, he got angry on my behalf. "Storm, that's not just unfair, it's theft," he said, his eyes flashing with indignation. "You have to do something." Marcus became my rock. He'd show up at my grim little room with 2 cups of good coffee and a bag of pastries, refusing to let me subsist on noodles alone. He read my early chapters, not just as a friend but as a professional. He designed a mock-up cover for the Ghost's Manifesto that was so beautiful and powerful it made me cry. It made it feel real. He saw me. Not the ghost, not the help, but the writer. His belief was a quiet, steady flame in the dark. Through a friend of a friend, I got a meeting with a literary agent. His name was Leo. He was sharp, cynical, and wore impeccably tailored suits that seemed out of place in the scruffy cafe where we met. He had a reputation for being ruthless and brilliant. "A tell, all from an influencer's ghostwriter," he said, leaning back in his chair and steepling his fingers. He looked unimpressed. "I get a dozen of these pitches a year. They're usually just bitter rants. What makes yours different?" I slid a folder across the table. It contained the first 3 chapters of my book and a meticulously organized appendix of evidence, screenshots of texts, email chains, original draft documents with timestamps, contrasted with Cece's final published posts. "I'm not bitter," I said, my voice steady. "I'm a better writer than she is, and I can prove I wrote every word she ever claimed as her own." Leo opened the folder. He read for 20 minutes in complete silence, his expression unreadable. I drank my coffee, my heart hammering against my ribs. Finally, he looked up, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. It was the hungry glint of a shark that has just scented blood in the water. "This isn't just a tell-all," he said slowly, tapping a finger on the manuscript. "This is a story about the entire creator economy. It's about authenticity, intellectual property, and the lie of the effortless lifestyle. This has potential, Pemberton. Real potential." That was the first fruit of my labor. It was a single-word potential from a man who didn't deal in false hope. It was everything. Leo took me on as a client. He was ruthless in his feedback, pushing me to make the book sharper, funnier, and more insightful. He helped me shape my personal story into a universal one. The freelance work, the hardship, had inadvertently given me an edge. I knew the industry inside and out, not from the glamorous top-down view, but from the trenches. I could dissect the mechanics of a viral post, the anatomy of a sponsored campaign, the psychology of a parasocial relationship. My struggle had become my expertise. I finished the manuscript 3 months later. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but it was mine. Every word, every comma, every drop of ink was mine. Marcus took me out for a proper dinner to celebrate, the first I'd had in almost a year. "You did it," he said, raising his glass. "You built your own house." I smiled, a real, genuine smile. "It's just a manuscript," I said. "No," he replied, his eyes serious and warm. "It's a foundation, and it's solid as a rock." A week later, Leo called. He had sent the proposal out to 5 major publishing houses. All 5 wanted it. A bidding war had started. The ghost was about to get a voice, and it was going to be louder than I ever could have imagined. The phone call from Leo felt like a dream. A major publisher, one of the most respected houses in the world, had not only won the bidding war for the Ghost's Manifesto, but they had offered an advance that was more money than I had earned in the last 10 years combined. It was a life-changing, ground-altering number. "The offer is contingent on one thing," Leo had said, his voice laced with the thrill of the kill. "They want to position this as a major exposé. They need to verify your evidence, all of it." "It's all there," I said, my heart pounding. I had spent months organizing my decade of digital receipts into an unshakable fortress of proof. The deal was signed. The news was placed under a strict embargo until the publisher's marketing team could orchestrate the perfect reveal. For the first time in a year, I could breathe. I paid off my debts. I moved out of the depressing little room and into a clean, bright apartment with a small balcony. I bought a real desk and a comfortable chair. These small luxuries felt like unthinkable extravagances. While my life was quietly transforming, Cece's was beginning to show signs of decay. Without me, her content lost its soul. The captions became generic and littered with cliches. The blog posts were rambling and incoherent, clearly dictated into a phone and transcribed without any of the flair or structure I had provided. Her audience, while still large, began to notice. The engagement numbers dipped. The once adoring comments were now sprinkled with criticism. "This feels different. Where's the depth you used to have, Cece? This is so boring." Cece, ever oblivious, blamed the algorithm. She couldn't see that the magic wasn't in her vision, it was in the execution she had taken for granted. The engine of her empire had been removed, and the whole glittering machine was starting to sputter. The turning point, the moment the universe seemed to script itself, came in the form of a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. "Hello? Storm, it's Tiffany." I was so shocked I couldn't speak for a moment. Tiffany, Cece's golden girl, her pampered creative director. "What do you want, Tiffany?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. Look, I know things ended badly," she stammered, and I could hear the panic in her voice. "But I'm in trouble. Cece's book, the manuscript is a disaster." I leaned back in my new, comfortable chair. "Is that so?" "She's tried hiring other writers, but none of them can get her voice right. The publisher is threatening to pull the plug if they don't get a decent draft in the next month. She's losing it, Storm. And she's blaming me." This was the role reversal I had never dared to imagine. The privileged, favored one was now facing the consequences of incompetence. She was in over her head, and the safety net me was gone. "She keeps saying you were just the help," Tiffany continued, her voice cracking. "But it's not true, is it? You did everything. The voice everyone loves, that was you. Wasn't it?" It was the first time anyone from that world had acknowledged the truth. It was a grudging, desperate admission, but it was an admission nonetheless. "I need your help," she pleaded. "Could you just look at a chapter? Tell me what to do? I'll pay you, of course." The offer was so laden with irony it was almost painful. "No, Tiffany," I said, my voice calm and firm. "I can't help you, that part of my life is over." "But what am I going to do?" she whimpered. "That sounds like a you and Cece problem," I said, and with a quiet click, I ended the call. I felt a pang of something that wasn't quite pity, but a sad recognition of her predicament. She had tethered her career to a sinking ship, never realizing the captain didn't know how to swim. Cece, meanwhile, remained blissfully, arrogantly unaware of the tidal wave that was about to hit her. I heard through the grapevine that she knew I was working on some little writing project. She had apparently told a mutual acquaintance. I feel so bad for Storm. It's hard to make it as a writer when you don't have a platform. I hope her little blog works out. Her condescension was a gift. It ensured she would never see me coming. Her hubris was the perfect camouflage for my ambush. The setup for the final confrontation arrived in my inbox a week later. It was a glossy, formal invitation. Celeste Vance was to be the keynote speaker at Influence Icon, the largest and most prestigious social media marketing conference in the country. The event would also serve as the official launch party for her book, the book that didn't exist in any readable form. She was going to stand on the biggest stage in her industry and celebrate a lie. I forwarded the invitation to Leo. His reply was immediate. "This is it, this is the stage." My publisher's publicity team sprang into action. They secured me a press pass for the event. They coordinated with a top-tier industry publication for an exclusive interview, ready to be published at a precise moment. The press release for The Ghost's Manifesto was drafted, the cover art was finalized, and a digital media kit was prepared. All the pieces were being moved into place on the board. The ghost, the help, the girl with the little blog, was about to checkmate the queen. As I packed my bag for the trip, I felt a strange calm. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared. The years of resentment had been transmuted into something else entirely, a quiet, unshakable certainty. I wasn't going there for revenge. Revenge was a hot, messy emotion. This was colder. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming a narrative that had been stolen from me. I had my publisher, I had Leo, and I had Marcus, who insisted on coming with me for support. I had my chosen family, and I had the truth locked and loaded. Cece was about to host a party celebrating her greatest achievement. She had no idea she had just invited her own executioner. The conference hall was vast, a sea of 1,000 faces all turned toward a brightly lit stage. The air buzzed with energy, a potent cocktail of ambition, caffeine, and aspirational jargon. Influence icon was the Super Bowl of the creator world, and Celeste Vance was the star quarterback. I found my seat in the press section, flanked by Leo in his sharp suit and Marcus, who gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. From our vantage point, I had a clear view of the stage and the front rows. I saw Tiffany, looking pale and anxious, fussing with the teleprompter controls. I saw Cece's parents, beaming with pride. I saw the CEO of her publishing house, looking smug. Cece was backstage, but her presence was everywhere. Her face was on the giant screens, her logo on the lanyards, her book cover the one for the fraudulent book projected behind the podium. The conference host, a slick man with a dazzlingly white smile, came out to warm up the crowd. In a few moments we'll be hearing from the woman you've all been waiting for, the voice of a generation, Celeste Vance. But first, she's agreed to a short, informal Q&A with some of our VIP guests. A microphone began to circulate through the front rows. The questions were softballs. Cece, what's your #1 tip for growing an audience? Cece, how do you balance authenticity with monetization? Then, a well-known industry journalist stood up. Cece, she began, your journey has been incredible. Can you take us back to the beginning? Was there a key person, a mentor or a partner, who helped you find your voice in those early days when it was just a small blog? This was it. The public slight, the final erasure. Cece's face appeared on the giant screens as she answered from backstage, her voice piped into the auditorium. She laughed, that familiar, airy sound. That's such a great question. You know, in the beginning, it was just me and my laptop, pouring my heart out. I did have a lovely intern for a while, a sweet girl named Storm. So creative, but just didn't have that spark, you know? I tried to mentor her, to help her find her footing, but she eventually decided the industry wasn't for her. I truly wish her the best. A sweet girl tried to mentor her. The condescension was so profound, so publicly delivered, that the audience murmured in sympathy for this powerful woman and her failed protégé. They were eating it up. I didn't flinch. I didn't react. I just looked at Leo. He gave me a single, almost imperceptible nod. That was the signal. My action wasn't a dramatic speech or a shouted accusation. It was silent, it was digital, it was devastating. In a control room miles away, my publisher's publicist hit send. Suddenly, the buzzing in the room changed. It was no longer the hum of anticipation. It was the vibration of 1,000 phones receiving a notification at the exact same moment. A low murmur rippled through the crowd as people glanced at their screens, then another, then 100. On the stage, the host's smile faltered as he looked at his own phone. His face went white. The headline of the exclusive article, now live, was stark. The Ghost Speaks. Influencer Celeste Vance's empire built on ghostwriter's stolen words, explosive tell, all alleges. Simultaneously, the official press release hit the wires. Storm Pemberton, the acclaimed writer behind the Celeste Vance brand, announces her debut memoir, The Ghost's Manifesto, from a major publisher. My book cover, the real one, the one Marcus had designed, with my name and my face on it, was now spreading through the room like wildfire, passed from screen to screen. The public revelation came from the very journalist who had asked the question. She stood up again, her voice cutting through the growing chaos. She held her phone up. I have a follow-up question, she said, her voice ringing with authority, not for backstage but for the CEO of her publishing house, who is sitting right there in the front row. She pointed. Can you comment on the breaking news that your star author's work was allegedly written entirely by Storm Pemberton? And that your house in fact passed on her manuscript, which was just acquired by your biggest competitor for a 7-figure sum? Every head in the room swiveled to the publisher. His smug expression had dissolved into pure, slack-jawed horror. He looked like he'd been struck by lightning. The conference host, trying to regain control, stammered, "We're about to bring Celeste out." But it was too late. The spell was shattered. The carefully constructed mirage had evaporated. The shifting of allegiances was swift and brutal. I saw Tiffany look from the panicked publisher to her own phone, where my book cover was glowing. She looked up, her eyes scanning the crowd until they found mine. There was no malice in her expression, only a dawning, horrified understanding. She slowly sat down, making herself small, effectively deserting her post. Cece's parents, who had been beaming moments before, were now whispering frantically to each other, their faces etched with confusion and shame. Their friends in the surrounding seats subtly leaned away from them, creating a visible pocket of isolation. And then, the moment of pure, cinematic vindication. The stage technician, a young woman I'd seen Tiffany speaking with earlier, looked from her console to the journalist, then back at the giant screen behind the podium. With a few keystrokes, she switched the video feed. Cece's fraudulent book cover vanished. In its place, projected 30 feet high for the entire industry to see, was the cover of The Ghost's Manifesto. My face, my name. A collective gasp went through the auditorium. It was a public coronation and a public execution, all in the same instant. Cece finally chose that moment to walk onto the stage, stepping into the spotlight, ready to receive her applause. But there was no applause. There was only a vast, echoing silence and 1,000 people staring at the image of my face looming behind her. She stopped, confused. She looked out at the silent, staring crowd, then followed their gaze up to the screen. I watched her see it. I watched the color drain from her face, the confident smile collapsing into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. Our eyes met across the vast room. The ghost was invisible no more, and in that moment, she knew she had been completely and utterly vanquished. The aftermath was a media firestorm. The story was everywhere. Cece's carefully curated image was shattered overnight. The influence icon disaster became an industry legend, a cautionary tale whispered in marketing meetings and journalism schools. Her publisher immediately canceled her book contract, citing a morals clause and the overwhelming evidence of misrepresentation. Her sponsors, terrified of the association with such a public fraud, dropped her in droves. Her talent agency released her. Within a month, her glittering empire had been reduced to rubble. My book, The Ghost's Manifesto, was rushed into publication. It debuted at #1 on the bestseller list. The narrative I had fought so hard to reclaim was now being read by millions. It was praised not just for the juicy exposé, but for its sharp, witty, and poignant exploration of voice, value, and the true meaning of authenticity. My new reality was a life I had never allowed myself to dream of. I was no longer a ghost. I was an author. I was invited to speak at conferences, real ones, as a respected expert. I was interviewed for magazines and podcasts, not as a source on Cece, but as a writer with a unique and powerful perspective. I used my platform to advocate for other creatives, for fair compensation and proper credit. Marcus was by my side through it all. Our friendship had blossomed into a deep and loving partnership built on mutual respect and admiration. He celebrated my successes as if they were his own, a stark and healing contrast to my past. With him, Leo, my publisher, and a handful of new true friends, I had finally built my chosen family. We were a small, sturdy structure built on a foundation of truth. Cece tried to reach out, of course. First, it was a cease and desist letter from a lawyer, a hollow threat that Leo swatted away with contempt. Then came a long, rambling email, a pathetic attempt at spin and self-pity that never once contained the words, "I'm sorry." It was all about how her life was ruined, how I had betrayed her trust. I deleted it without replying. Months later, long after the noise had died down, I received a one-line text from an unknown number. It just said, "You were right. I'm sorry." It might have been from her. It might have been from Tiffany. It didn't matter. I had moved on. The desire for her apology had vanished, replaced by a serene and powerful indifference. My self-worth was no longer a fragile thing held in her hands, to be validated or dismissed at her whim. It was forged within me, solidified by my struggle and proven by my work. I didn't need her to admit my value. I had demonstrated it to the world, and, more importantly, to myself. I did run into Tiffany about a year later. She was working a low-level marketing job, the glow of her former life completely gone. She approached me hesitantly. "Storm," she said, her eyes downcast. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, for everything. You were the talent. We all knew it, but we were too caught up in the lie to admit it. What you did, it was brave." "Thank you, Tiffany," I said, and I meant it. I felt no anger towards her, only a sort of sad understanding. "I hope you're doing okay." Our conversation was brief, a quiet closing of a painful chapter. I had established my boundaries not with anger or confrontation, but with success and self-possession. The power dynamic had been permanently and irrevocably rewritten. I had no need to engage with that world anymore. I was busy building my own. The final, most important lesson from all of this was not about revenge or even about justice. It was about ownership. My voice is my own. My story is my own. My value is not determined by a byline or a title or the approval of someone more powerful. It is inherent in the quality of my work and the integrity of my spirit. Adversity didn't break me, it revealed me. It burned away the ghost and left the writer in her place. The family you choose, the allies who see you and believe in you when you are invisible, can be more real and more vital than any connection forged by circumstance. So, I want to ask you all a question. Have you ever had to fight to make your voice heard, to claim credit for your own work or your own story? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story has value, and your voice deserves to be heard. Thank you so much for listening to mine. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding your power. Remember, never let anyone else tell your story for you. You are the author. Pick up the pen and write your own ending.